Video games, there's a lot of them. So much so that there's bound to be ones that fall to the wayside. Some deservingly and others not so much. Especially racing games. It's a genre that has unfortunately died over the years. Not to the point where it's completely disappeared, but enough to the point where you can notice a drop-off. There's only been a few standout racing games from the last decade or so, and today I'll be looking at one of them. A racing game that I used to play back in the day of 2010, that I've only just now rediscovered a decade later, and that game is ModNations Racers. ModNations Racers began development in 2008 by United Front Games, who were made up of developers all across the field, including some very well-known studios such as Black Box, Rockstar Vancouver, Radical Entertainment, and Volition. It was then announced a year later at E3 and was said to be a thoroughly modern take on kart racing by William Ho, the man who would go on to work on another favourite game of mine. It was heavily advertised with the tagline Play, Create, Share, a term coined by Sony that focused on encouraging players to create content within the game for other people to play. ModNations Racers was the second game to use the tagline alongside Little Big Planet, Joe Danger, and most recently, Dreams. The game received a private and public beta for people to try and test the game, and just a week before release it was also given a demo which I personally played a ton of, creating lots of mods, karts and tracks, even with the limited tools that were available. It gave a very good idea of what the game was going to be like, and then it finally released. On May 25th, 2010, ModNations Racers was released as a Sony exclusive, with the PSP version being released alongside it on the same day. When you first boot up the game, you are greeted with an introduction to the game's story, which is centered around the ModNation Racing Championship, a racing tournament hosted by Biff Treadwell and Gary Reasons, who are, let's say, the best hosts that you could possibly want for a racing tournament of this magnitude. They set the vibe of the game right off the bat with their constant banter towards each other, which you'll be hearing and seeing a lot of throughout the entire game. You are then introduced to Tag, who tags. Get it? He's the silent protagonist of the game who decides to enter the MRC with help from his mother and grandfather, Chief. I wonder what his role is in the story. It's a story that doesn't get in the way of the gameplay too much while providing just enough context as to why you're playing and not taking itself too seriously, if you couldn't already tell. After that, you are put into your first race where you are qualifying for the MRC. Once you've completed the qualifier event, you are then free to roam the main hub area known as the Mod Spot. In the Mod Spot, you can access all of the game's many modes and features by driving to and from them. But first, I'm going to talk about where you'll be spending most of your time. The Career Mode. In the Career Mode, there are 5 tours to complete: the Home Tour, the Mayhem Tour, the Range Tour, the Grim Tour, and the Grand Tour. Every race has 3 objectives for you to complete while racing to unlock customization items. They can range from easy to complete in one go, to furiously restarting multiple times to earn. For example, in the Mayhem Tour on the third event named Island Dash, you have to earn 4,000 airtime points, which you do by staying high in the air for a certain amount of time. Wow. On a track where there's not many opportunities to gain a huge amount of airtime. So by the end of the race, you've only managed to get not even half of the requirement. And this is only one of the many challenges that you'll see throughout the career mode that will make you think, how? Thankfully though, it's all optional, so unless you're a completionist, you won't go too crazy. Every tour has a variety of locations to keep the driving fresh and interesting. One minute you'll be driving through a peaceful village that has no danger in sight, to a track littered with elevation changes and obstacles that somehow made it past safety regulations. After completing the Home Tour, you'll be greeted by your first major opponent in the Mayhem Tour known as Drill Bear. What kind of name is that? He's an elite mod, which are basically the bosses of the game that you encounter throughout each tour. To race against an elite mod, you have to complete the 3 objectives that you would normally do in a race, but instead to unlock a grudge match. During these events, you'll either be battling for points or going up against their thugs. And when you complete these events, you'll be given more customization items along with their mod and kart. Overall, it's a career mode that doesn't overstay its welcome, with only having 28 events in total, along with a variety of tracks to race on. It's a career mode worth playing through, especially if you want to unlock every single customization item. That's if you're willing to go through the pain. So now that you know how the game is structured, let me tell you how it plays. With this game being a kart racer, the handling has a pick up and play attitude so that anyone can pick up the control and have some fun. The handling is smooth and responsive, being able to string drifts together effortlessly to the point where you don't even need to drive in a straight line, which means you're a pro gamer. While going through the career mode, the game will teach you every skill you will need while racing, such as power-ups. Power-ups come in the form of offensive and defensive attacks, varying from a bolt of lightning to a supercharger. They can all be leveled up by collecting multiple of them and can go up to a maximum level of 3. For example, this supercharger can go from a small jump start to a warp in time and space. These weapons can also be turned into secondaries, which allow you to drop them like a mine, leaving it behind for the AI as a trap. Now it's cool and all when you're using them to take out opponents ahead of you, but once you've been attacked with it, you're gonna want some defense. In order to protect yourself from these weapons, you have to use your boost meter to bring up a shield, which you build up by drifting, drafting, doing stunts, but you're gonna want to be careful about it because, as the name implies, you're using your boost meter. So you need to strike a balance, using it for when you need to sideswipe or shield yourself from an opponent, and needing the boost away from the competition. Now when it comes to difficulty in this game, I would say that it's mostly a cakewalk due to the AI not really giving much of a challenge, but there are moments where it's a complete nightmare, and not in the way of how difficult they are, but how cheap they can be. Whether that's speeding up to the front out of nowhere, or having what seems like unlimited weapons to throw at you to the point where you can't even get going again. But most of the time I would say that they're very easy to deal with and aren't a complete nightmare. So now that you know where you'll be spending half of your time, let me tell you where you'll be spending the other half of your time. Creating. Welcome to the creation station, where possibilities are endless and can take up just as much time as the racing itself. There are 3 types of creations here: mods, karts, and tracks. Now, I'll be here for days trying to list out everything that is possible, but if I have to start somewhere, let's just say anything is possible. With plenty of options to choose from to create your very own mod and kart, there's no shortage of what you could come up with. For mods, there's skins, facial features, hairstyles, clothing, voices, stickers, and even props. And for karts, there's bodies, engines, suspension, wheels, seats, steering wheels, spoilers, license plates, and even a livery editor. So if you wanted to create a car made entirely from cardboard that's powered by a Tesla coil, you could do that. If you wanted a piece of bacon with facial hair on it as your character, you could do that too. Basically what I'm trying to say is that this is creativity at its finest. And I haven't even talked about the track creator yet. For the track creator, you can create a track just by driving where you would like the race to start and end, with a variety of tools to create a landscape with mountains and valleys, along with vegetation, animals, and houses to complete it. Now, if you don't feel like creating anything and just want to have something already made for you, you can either hit that randomize button and be terrified, or go and use that search function to find something that someone else made, which leads me into the online of the game. Now, I can't speak too much on the online as I never got into it as much as other people who played the game, but what I do know is that the online was an integral component to the game as seen in the hub area. Being able to see the top mods, karts, and tracks from the community, and who had the best lap times on certain tracks. And then you could go ahead and download those creations and play them and rate them accordingly. Although many of those mods and karts often cross the line of copyright infringement, like that beautiful Sonic, but it was still fun to see the numerous mods and karts that were there to see. Alongside this, it also featured your traditional racing, where you could either set up your own races and invite your friends, or play against other players in ranked or casual. In these lobbies, they were filled with an enormous amount of user-created tracks that looked like they were inspired by a Hot Wheels track. I mean, look at this. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Look at that. From what I've seen, you didn't actually earn anything for leveling up online besides a statue if you were a player with the highest level, which is probably the only downside of the multiplayer, that being no reward, but I guess playing on these insane tracks does the job instead. Unfortunately though, the online for this game was shut down on October 10th of 2018, meaning all of that content that was created by many users years ago are gone. And since this game depended on the online with its social integrations with the hub area and downloading and playing other people's creations, basically half the game was gone. Which is a shame because, as I mentioned before, I never really got into the online, mainly the racing aspect of it when I was playing it. But at least I got to see this game when it was at its peak with the fan base constantly creating, but even then, knowing now that all those creations I saw years ago made by so many people are gone, I can't help but feel a little bit sad. Nearly a decade after the studio was originally founded, they would go defunct. On October 17th, 2016, United Front Games was closed, leaving 145 employees without a job. There's been no definitive information as to why they closed, leaving only speculation and rumors as to why. Now, I know the likelihood of people from United Front Games actually seeing this is very low, but I would like to thank everyone at United Front Games for making what is probably one of my favorite, not just racing, but overall game from the last decade. I can't think of any other racer like it that has come out within the past 10 years that's really given me the same enjoyment. The game allowed for unlimited possibilities with its simple but powerful creation tools, ahead of its time in terms of its social features and overall online functionality with the hub area showcasing the community's creations. It really made it feel like a living, breathing world. Yes, it did have its issues such as the loading times and the occasional dips in frame rate, but overall, it was a solid racing game that was unfortunately lost to time in the overall racing game landscape. Now, if you have not played this game, or it's been a while since you played it, go back to it. It's a highly polished game that, even with its few imperfections, still makes it a solid racing game. It delivers on every level of customization, gameplay, and visuals. It's all here for you in ModNation Racers now. Go and play it. So you made it to the end of the video. And that means I finally finished this video, which I was originally planning on finishing like some time ago, but plans fell through. Nonetheless though, I'm pretty happy with what came out in the end, and I'm glad I took the extreme to really make sure that this video turned out exactly how I wanted it to be. Hopefully it won't be another century for my next video, but I'll have to wait and see. But before I end this video, I'd like to ask two things. Number one, if you played this game, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments down below. And number two, what's a game that you think has been swept away undeservingly? And with those questions left pondering in your mind, I'll see all of you in another few months.